Hello and welcome to Abnormal Presence Touring Talkies. I'm Kamla Iyer. Today, our sartorial suffer takes us on a journey to Bagalkot district in North Karnataka, home to the beautiful Ilkal and Khana or Khan weaves. My guest today is a handloom enthusiast and an Ilkal researcher working with the weavers of North Karnataka. Her focus has been enabling and facilitating the right marketplace for the Ilkal weaves and bridging the gap between the weaver and the consumer. She is also involved in research and revival of the long lost design palettes of the Ilkal weave. She is avidly followed on social media for her love and knowledge of the handloom weaves of Karnataka. That's where I met her first, and we've been in touch ever since. She's had a rewarding corporate career in communications and in the institutional sector as a consultant to the government of Karnataka in various departments. She's also a keen photographer. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Vrinda Shekhar, my friend and expert today. Very warm welcome to you, Vrinda. Thank you so much for taking time off to record with me today.
Thank you so much.
So, if I want to start, could you tell us a bit about the history and origins of the Ilkal weave? And to begin with, the first question really is it Ilkal or is it Irkal?
Uh, to be Ilkal and to be Irkal has a small history behind it. If you actually check or if you read the etymology of Ilkal saris, wherever the Chalukya rulers ruled, that is essentially between Narmada and Krishna rivers, is where they had spread their kingdom at. So from Narmada to Krishna also included most parts of Maharashtra. Although Chalukya rulers were from North Karnataka majorly, southern Maharashtra, major parts of southern Maharashtra was also under their control. So this meant that Ilkal as a town which, or where the Ilkal saris originated from, remained Ilkal, and the parts of southern Maharashtra where Ilkal saris were produced or woven was called Irkal. But then after the GI tagging of Ilkal saris happened, Ilkal saris was, predominantly was to be addressed as Ilkal, but then it is still addressed as Irkal, Irkali, Ikkal, Ikkal, and I have myself heard about 10-15 names, and I'm like, where did this come from? But then it's also in the usage, because North Maharashtra and North Karnataka and Southern Maharashtra have worn Ilkal saris as a staple wear for a very long time. So the region is bound to call in several dialects or several names of Ilkal, but essentially it is Ilkal only. I mean, I keep a lot of people do raise this with me, saying it is not Ilkal, we call it Irkal, we call it Irkali, but then that's how our culture is framed, which is absolutely okay. GI tagging of Ilkal has happened. We prefer to call it Ilkal. Also, it belongs to Ilkal, a town near Badami, North Karnataka. Hence, it is Ilkal. The origins of Ilkal goes back to the 7th century. Jagadeka Malla, the ruler of the Chalukya kings, is supposed to have built the temple of Banashankari. Banashankari was also called Vanashankari, Shakambari, and different names, because the forest where the temple was built, it is called the Tilakaranya forest. It is actually in the cusp between Deccan Plateau and Western Ghats. So it was extremely salubrious, richly vegetated, and things like that. So after the temple was built and the kingdom was actually built around the temple, that's how they began. Jagateka Malla, it is believed, also fostered the weaving of saris. Why saris in particular? The goddess had to be adorned or accessorized with the sari, and then that's how Ilkal saris also came into being. So essentially the history of Chalukyas is the history of Ilkal as well. So from 7th century onwards, we are in 2020 now, it still continues to be the everyday worn sari of the women, which has such a vast and wide history.
Absolutely. So tell me, the Ilkal sari itself, what is a typical sari's construct? You know, when I talk of a sari, if I say there is a border, there is a body, and there is a palla, how would you describe an typical Ilkal sari construct?
Uh, it is said that you could recognize an Ilkal sari from a kilometer away. That can't be said of all the other saris or all other weaves of India, right? If you wear a Kanjivaram, for instance, or if you wear a Chanderi, for instance, or a Maheshwari, for instance, from a kilometer away, I don't think you can make out what the weaves are. Whereas if you wore an Ilkal sari, the red palla, the pallu that has beautiful, white strips that runs along like the lines that you would see in the palla, was actually Ilkal saris. In the earlier times, in the older times, there was only red pallu. There was no other color. What you see these days are all variations and small interventions in terms of designs. But then, until about 20 years ago or 25 years ago, red was the only predominant pallu color. I don't think in as much as I have seen of Ilkal, there is any other color other than red. So the red with the white strip that you see in between was, very, very, and the colors were very startling. I mean, the colors were bright, and if you actually saw the colors either in brightness or darkness, that red always shone. Why, you would want to know? I mean, why red and why Ilkal and why red? Red because Ilkal, the area of Ilkal is very rich in red granite. In fact, Ilkal, is more known for the red granite that it actually produces. Not really as much as Ilkal saris that are produced there. So it is known for red, and all things red with the goddess is associated with power, is with valor, with strength, and you would associate a goddess of Shakti with. And then that's how the red started. So predominantly everything had red with it. Also, why red? Is because the indigo that was available, that was grown and available during that time around that region, was very rich in that color palette. If you know the gradient of Ilkal, I mean the gradient of the indigo color, that dark color could give rise to a lot of colors, right? So that red that you saw had indigo in it, is the reason why it all came together and started as red. And then, the design palette of Ilkal is very limited. As I said, it actually began as a weave for the goddess. It didn't really begin as the weave for the mass, and anybody, everybody could lay their hands on, kind of thing. So it was for the goddess per se. So all the colors were strictly followed as being red or black or white and things like that. And every single color has its own significance in Ilkal saris as well. Okay. So since it was the goddess, and there was also limited design palette, as I told you, the pallu was only of one type, the body was of a few types, and the border, the very important factor in all Ilkal saris, and how they're priced as well. Because if you look at a sari and say how much could it possibly price, it all depends on the amount of silk or the jari that is used in the border, that actually determines the price of a sari as well. Earlier, I mean, during olden times, it is said that there were more than 120 varieties of borders itself. We have absolutely no documental evidence of what could have possibly been there. But now we have about 5 or 6 varieties only. As a matter of fact, Narayanpet saris, which is close to Ilkal, also has motifs and designs in the sari. which Ilkal doesn't have. That is actually an influence of Venkatgiri and other, regions as well for Narayanpet. So Ilkal is very specific on the way it is woven. That ilkal was actually woven separately. The body of the ilkal, the border, the pallu were all woven separately, and then they were all joined together. As you know, the Korvai method, or linking of all these separate pieces into one cohesive piece called the ilkal sari used to happen until about 15 years ago. But then it was also getting very difficult for these weavers to actually bring it together and manually twine it. So, the weavers came up with the fact that in the same loom that they were producing the sari, they could make the pallu as well, and then they could actually attach the body while weaving. So now you have saris comprehensively woven in one loom. Ilkal uses pit loom. Where the saris are made. It is not a frame loom, although some parts of it earlier used to be on frame loom. Now that the saris are made as a whole, as a single piece, now only the pit looms are used for ilkal saris. Why do I keep harping about very less designs about ilkal saris is that they did not give importance to designs at all. Because when you are actually when you are decorating or adorning a goddess, what is important for you is how you present it. For a viewer, if I'm looking at you and you're the goddess for me, I would essentially look at the pallu being draped on you, right?
Correct.
So other parts of the body need not be seen or need not be shown at all. So what became important was just the color and how well or how beautifully could you actually portray or project the pallu in front of the goddess. As I said, it is aligned to the goddess, hence everything begins from there. So whatever you had inside, if you could have had some designs and things like that, would not have become apparent, or it wouldn't have been evident there. So they say that's one of the reasons why it didn't need any design intervention per se, right?
Yeah.
So that's what makes it beautiful. It is said, I have not really been able to make a headway there, but then the goddess Banashankari, beneath the goddess are some ilkal designs. If you see what you and I are wearing, what you are wearing is a dadi, as in any design that runs along the sari. You are wearing a dadi board. Anything that is running along the sari is called a dadi.
Okay.
It does not matter what the design on your border is, so long as it is running continuously along the line of the sari, because it doesn't get cut anywhere. If you see your pallu, it still goes on.
Yes.
Right? All along, if you notice. Right? So there is no breakage.
Yeah.
So dadi also means that it is a continual line. All right. So what you're wearing essentially has something called the Gayatri border in between. If you notice this, the Gayatri is because if you closely notice the design, it is a Rudraksha.
Correct. I was going to say it is a Rudraksha.
Right?
Yeah.
It is a Rudraksha. The Rudraksha and Gayatri are spoken in the same way, because Gayatri is a part of Shiva and things like that, right? So, so the Rudraksha that you see is also the Om, and that's how the border is named. What I am wearing currently, this if you can actually see, which is a very common, the most common border and most worn sari of or sari design of ilkal border is the Paraspeta Chiki. Everybody calls it Paraspeta. There are smaller variants, there are bigger variants. They're still called Paraspeta. Paras, why? Paras is also an indication of the brinjal seeds.
Oh.
In North Karnataka, the brinjal seeds are called paras.
Okay.
is the reason why it is called Paras Peta Chikki. Peta again is the line. If you see the lines on your sari, my sari, or all the kind of borders, they have the sharp serrated edges.
Yes.
Okay, if you see the
Yeah.
sharp, so that is the peta. All along the sari, if you see the serrated edges, it's called the peta.
Okay.
So, and chikki because of the dots that you see. If you
Right.
actually see this, you know, see,
Yeah.
if you see this, you see the dots in there.
Correct.
So it is because of the chikki. Chukki in Kannada is a dot.
Okay.
Chukki, chikki are all dots in Kannada. And that's how they get their names from. There are several others. I mean, most of the designs are derivatives of this. That is a line here, a line there, a line missing, and things like that. You have these missing check saris, right? So a few of the missing, lines on this will give rise to another design. I mean, earlier they were all different. As I said, we had 135 designs, but then now we are reduced to only 5. One, because Ilkal saris are predominantly moving from handloom to powerloom. Because the subsidies given to powerloom is far higher than what it is given for handloom saris, and that's the only reason why weavers have opted to do powerloom sari. Also, it is easier to make a powerloom sari. On a powerloom unit, you can make about 7 saris in an hour.
Wow.
Whereas to make an ilkal sari takes about 5 to 7 days. So that is the difference, So coming back to the body, as I said, pallu is only of one type. The pallu is called the topi tene. Why is it called topi tene? Is because the border, if you the pallu, if you see, are all the temple, like the conical borders that you see.
Yeah.
Right. If you just go to the pallu and see the conical end of if you see exactly, I will also show the same thing to you. Right. If you see the conical edges here, they are always in odd number. You can count on your sari as well.
Correct.
So they're all going inward. They're all 5 in number, or 3 in number, or 1 in number, and that's how it has to be. If it is an odd, it is a real one. Normally on powerloom, they do not make odd numbers.
Okay.
That's why. So if you see this, there are 5 in number going inward.
Yes.
Right? It is an odd number. And this is the only beauty of ilkal sari.
Yeah. And
no other, exactly. Since this is only one, this is the only, a palla, and there is nothing else. It is very easy to recognize an ilkal sari. Right? And that's the beauty of the ilkal sari. The best way to recognize is when you don't have too many options. If you do, it is very difficult for you to say, what the weave is, and you often tend to wonder whether you've worn a Chanderi, Maheshwari, ABCD, whereas ilkal has just one border called the topi tene border. The body also has very limited options. The body comes in either plain or checked, or horizontal or vertical lines. Right. And there is nothing else, because either the lines could be half the body or complete body, or it is plain. Apart from it being plain and checked and lined, there is no other option available in ilkal. That also actually makes it different, because again, there is no design in it except the line, or it being plain. There is nothing else that you can actually pinpoint and say, hey, there is a difference in this, right? So the lines and the plain and the checks, small checks, medium checks, large checks. We've been off late working on rectangles and things, rectangular shapes and things like that. Which is all, again, I don't know if that is called ilkal, but it is ilkal, of course. These are small interventions that we're working on. just to bring a little variation, just to make it a little more contemporary. These days you would see light colors, so that gives you a little newer feel to the sari, a contemporary touch to the sari. But apart from that, the majority of the people would still, want a dark shaded ilkal, because that's the signature colors of ilkal sari. So I spoke to you about the palla and the body and the border. Of course, the border has about 5 or 6 designs. One is the Paraspeta Chikki. Paraspeta Chikki, small and large. You also have Gadi Dada. As I said, Dada is that line that runs through. One of the Gadi Dada designs is like a railway track. Which is why it is called, Gadi is a machine, any vehicle for that matter. So it is called the Gadi Dada. That runs like a, like a track, which is why it is called so. The powerloom design, earlier it was a handloom design, but now there is only one powerloom design. It is called the Nagamurige. Although Nagamurige is still made in silk on handloom, there are a few designers who have revived it. But earlier, until about 20 years ago, Nagamurige as a design was used on handloom sari. Chevron border. Naga is the snake, right? The movement of the snake in the triangular order, you actually see, right? Yeah. So that is called the Nagamurige. But then now, Ilkal on Nagamurige is a powerloom sari.
Oh, I see.
Handloom Nagamurige is available, but then there are only a handful of weavers making it. The last I knew, this loom was available only with just 2 weavers in the entire Ilkal belt. One of the reasons why Ilkal was or is popular in North Karnataka and Southern Maharashtra is Ilkal is produced in a lot of centers in North Karnataka, whereas in about 150 to 200 kilometers around Ilkal district, Ilkal town, you have Ilkal saris being produced. So there are about 25 centers where Ilkal saris are produced in North Karnataka. In Southern Maharashtra, it is produced at Solapur, which is why it is called an Irkal sari. Since Ilkal saris became the staple of the women of North Karnataka, when the Chalukya Empire was growing, and after it actually fell, the smaller regions of North Karnataka started getting ruled by the regional governors or the provincial heads there, and they also needed Ilkal saris for their system. So that's one of the reasons where all these 25 centers still have palaces, and they were centers of power, hence they became the weaving centers as well, and that's how they are connected. In about 25 centers now, about 10 have already got converted into powerloom, and 15 remain the handloom saris, and where Ilkal saris are produced. But then it caters to a lot of people in North Karnataka, because until this day in 2020, Ilkal is still the staple wear of the women of North Karnataka. I recently heard this. It is called an AC sari. Why? Because it keeps you cool in summers and keeps you warm in winters. The nool, the thread that comes, is actually made on the black soil. One of the reasons why black is a very, very strong and predominant color of Ilkal is this, because it is produced on black soil, and the cotton produced on black soil has a very, very rich capacity to retain the moisture.
Okay.
In the sari. Hence, when you wear an Ilkal sari, the chances that you sweat profusely is very, very less. even during very harsh summers. So it was also convenient for women to go out and work wearing the sari. And it is said that they wore the sari a little above their ankle, one just not to get their sari soiled, because the saris there, I mean the mud, the terrain there is essentially on red soil and black soil, and also the very fact that it's very difficult to wipe off the mud off the weave, right? So I mean, so that's one of the reasons why people apparently wore it ankle up. It is also believed that the area, I mean, one of the reasons why you see a silver in the palla is because of extensive silver wearing in that region. A lot of people still wear a lot of silver, as opposed to all their counterparts in southern or central Karnataka. North Karnataka wears a lot of silver. So is the reason why you see the silver in the palla. And the anklets that the women wore, they wanted to show off as well. So if they could wear it above their anklets, it served two purposes as well. So and that's the reason why it is said that it was worn well above the anklet.
How beautiful.
Since they all worked hard, they had beautiful legs as well, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Right?
So true. Also, an ilkal sari length is a little longer than the normal, na?
One of the reasons why ilkal saris is woven to the length. Earlier, all the ilkal saris used to come in a standard 8.2 meter length.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, earlier was the 8.2. The reason being that it had two pallas. The reason being that most of the saris were worn as nawari. Or what we call kache in Kannada. Kache worn in North Karnataka are of two kinds. The kache that is coming from inside and the kache that comes from outside. The one that comes from outside is the Nawari kashta that you see. The one that comes from inside, typically like your Iyengar kind of pull that comes from behind, also meant that you could see a portion or a part of it from behind, not exactly completely, but a little portion of it. So that portion of wanting to see the kache from behind also came with a small design, and that's how you could recognize the sari as well. So if it was if it is purely kashta and the palla, the pallu coming from behind, the two strips that you see, the pallu is actually woven to show off that outside kache or the kashta, is the reason why it has two sides pallu. And normally, a lot of people cut it off and wear it as a blouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, because 8 meters to wear as a regular sari is extremely difficult. I mean, it's not conducive to wear it all day. So 2 meters goes as blouse plus something else, and then 6 meters you can wear it as a sari. Now it helps that you get both as a blouse and a sari as well. But then when I talk about blouse, it is also very interesting to know that the Guled Gudda Khana, the khana blouses were actually made for ilkal saris only.
Okay, that's how it started.
Yeah, that's how it started, because people wore ilkal pieces as blouses earlier, and then during it's very interesting, during the 16th century, the Bahmani rulers, I mean, you would actually think, why would Bahmani rulers of the Deccan Plateau foster ilkal saris? Because the Chalukyas had completed the reign. The Bahmanis were ruling much of Deccan Plateau, and their women also wore ilkal saris apparently, which was very interesting. I mean, you wouldn't hear too many Muslims wearing ilkal saris and things like that, because it's essentially on a Hindu goddess and things like that. But then the Bahmanis fostered ilkal saris, which is very interesting. And since they did not have specific blouses to cater to these saris. They actually brought weavers from parts of central India, and some where there has been a Mughal influence, and this influence of Madhya Pradesh and Lucknow, or the Uttar Pradesh kind of influence, were brought to North Karnataka, and the Gule Gudda Khana blouses were woven. This khana, essentially, if you look at it, I mean, at the outset, if you just look at a khana blouse, it is called khan, khun, and whatnot, but then it is not true. It is khana. Khana in Kannada is a unit of measurement as well. So this khana was brought. As soon as you see a khana blouse, you would get that honeycomb effect on your sari. A typical brocade like, which is structured, very North Indian, if I may say so. That's because that's the way the weavers from North India were brought to the Deccan Plateau, and they started weaving of this kind. So the khana also became a staple accessory or the blouse for Ilkal saris, and this happened only in the 16th century. In the 1580, the king actually brought the weavers, and he set up a proper weaving unit for them near Ilkal and things like that. All of which is now, of course, documented, because khana has a definitive documentation. Ilkal doesn't.
Okay, very interesting. I mean, I never knew that. I used to always match my, Irkal saris with Khan, simply because I felt that the luster that is there in both is naturally like a match made in heaven.
True,
But
true.
now I can understand that it actually, it was destined to be like that.
Yeah, it has a wonderful 500-year history to it as well.
Right. So how interesting is that? So tell me, in terms of the yarns used in a sari, has that changed over time? I had read somewhere that it started off as cotton. Did it start off as cotton or something like that?
Earlier, until see, viscose. The saris are essentially made on these media: cotton, silk, and viscose. Cotton was available in that area. Silk was also available in that area, because if you know, Karnataka produces the largest. The production of silk is the largest in the country. Karnataka produces the largest. Over 72% of the silk production happens only in Karnataka. So to procure the raw materials from Karnataka itself was not a problem for them. And cotton was grown around that area. So saris were made either in cotton or silk, and silk and cotton were mixed to weave the Ilkal sari. But in the last 30 or 40 years, since artificial silk, where the art silk, or the viscose or the rayon, which is all synthetically, made. After it came, they realized that it was easy for them to make saris with cotton and silk, because the sari does not sweat, right? So you could actually weave it on viscose as well, and then you were still not going to sweat, despite it being a synthetically made sari. But then it is still used extensively, although cotton and silk are the predominant media that it is used on. Art silk or viscose or rayon is also used extensively, because as I said, the sari could fit well on viscose. If you actually see the viscose saris per se, what do you say? We call it jal. Means it is not straight. You see the bubbly or you see the wavy kind of feel in a normal viscose sari. Whereas when you mix it with cotton or silk, on Ilkal, on the loom, it actually comes out very well. Then it also became economical. The largest producing also could be more economical for the people to buy as well. Is the reason why weavers started using viscose. And since Bombay is close, Mumbai is close to North Karnataka. The availability of viscose material also was one of the reasons why this was used. In Mumbai or around the region of Mumbai is where you find more viscose than any other place in the country. So it for accessibility, that was easier as well. So that's the reason why you would find that the saris are made either on cotton, silk, and and viscose, along with cotton and silk. Earlier, the nobles and the aristocracy wore only silk, and they had signature silk saris, which unfortunately are all defunct now. And no documentation, as I said, is available. Hence, we don't really know what is the make and how it yeah, we don't know the construct of a sari. So some of the old blind weavers and the oldest of that region came forth to tell me about how they actually envisage the signature silks or the cottons to be. And now we are working on some kind of a skeletal structure on how it could have possibly looked. Again, we do not know. We are hoping that that might be a true representation. When it does, I will definitely be happy to share it with you.
Right. So when you say viscose, do you mean that viscose is a power loom sari?
No. On power loom, viscose is used extensively,
Yeah.
but then viscose can be used on handloom as well.
Also, okay.
Whereas on power loom, the cottons, viscose, and silks are also equally used. The nool, the thread used for handloom is the same thread as the power loom as well.
Okay. What are the typical colors one see? You spoke about it at the start that there are some very traditional colors like the black and the blue I'm wearing, of course, the red in the palla. Then there is a famous green. Now, were there any significance to these colors other than the red, which you mentioned was the goddess? And are we seeing newer colors coming now to make it more contemporary, as you said?
Colors is actually colors play a very, very important role in the evolution and in the way the Ilkal saris have grown. Why? Because the design options I said were practically zero in Ilkal saris, right? So the body had to be plain or checked or lined, right? So this also meant that the colors became more important than the colors themselves manifested as designs. So, and the dark tones also meant, because of the availability of the natural ingredient indigo, all the colors were essentially black, because indigo was used along with other dyes or color combinations, and that's the reason why most colors were dark. The very important or very predominant colors of old Ilkal saris are blue, black, red, green, dark yellow, that is mustard yellow, and I mean, not really on other colors. These are solid colors, as you know, as the gradations. Why? Because I'll take green for example. Green, as you know, is one of the most popular, one of the most worn saris, because, as I said, the goddess came from the region called Tilakaranya forest. Green also meant vegetation, green meant abundance, because the area was very rich in green vegetation, right? So the green became important. The black became important because it was the saris were woven on the cotton that was on black soil. So that is the significance of black. Red because the goddess is in red. Silver and white because the use of silver in everyday lives of the women of North Karnataka. So these dark colors, essentially every dark, this blue what you're wearing is actually a very, very important part of the Ilkal culture and history, because this blue that you're in is the indigo blue. There's a mild variation in this blue, but then this blue is an Ilkal blue, because the indigo that was used got the best out of the blue and the best out of the sheen. So you will still notice in your sari, despite having worn, even if you were to wash it, the sheen never goes away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also because of the until about 10 years, the indigo color as a natural ingredient was still available. But now with the shrinking capacities and usage of indigo as a dye, has given rise to synthetic usage of dark colors and things like that. But it is still available, but since it is very manual or labor intensive, not many people venture into making indigo saris. Also indigo, much as it is good for your skin, extensive use of indigo is not actually very good for your skin either, because people who are working on the dye, who use natural indigo as the main ingredient to use, have also been found with a lot of deformities in the hand and things like that, and that's true in Ilkal as well. I have personally seen a lot of weavers go through this. Hence, they prefer synthetic saris. And the best part about all this is, during the time of dyeing, when a sari, when the nool is dyed, fresh indigo is used, so that smell, there's a mild pungent smell if you actually smell the sari.
So you mentioned briefly about the khana. So and
Yeah.
the origin of the khana is, as well. Now the khana width is much shorter than a normal sari width. It's about 30.
If we talk about khana, khana, as I said, started in the 16th century, the end of 1580, when the production is supposed to have begun. Khana was actually made for Ilkal. The blouse was made for Ilkal. No other weave across any region of the country you would see an exclusive blouse piece made for any weave, right? So that made khana very special. But now, of course, the acceptance of khana to be used across all the weaves is very high, especially on plain saris. Any kind of plain sari, khana is a wonderful match to actually look at, whereas it was meant solely to accessorize Ilkal saris before. Khana in Kannada is a unit of measurement. It is half a meter. Half a meter is a khana. Khana was earlier stitched in a way as a quiche. It was a product of about 9 pieces of khana pieces, and then made into a blouse. And you had a long dory or a knot that you could tie near your bust, and you didn't have to button it, you didn't have to hook it, nothing. You just could wear it. And then while doing that, you also had a small pouch where you could keep your betel leaves and nuts and things like that. That's how it is worn. For a kana, you don't essentially need a 1 meter. Half a meter earlier, could have sufficed for a blouse. And most Ilkal women, or women who wore Ilkal, wore very short blouses. So you didn't really need more. Now we use a half, full, 3/4, and whatnot, right? So in the olden times, they wore. If you actually see my blouse, this was the only length to which it was cut. So half a meter was actually sufficient at that time. Of course, they accept. Now you have only power loom kanas. There are very, very less people making handloom kanas, which is sad. But on power loom, it is much easier, faster, and it is. As a promoter of handloom clothing, I must not be saying this, but then at the end of the day, all of them need to survive, all of them need to sustain, right? So power loom khana is the order of the day, because you can make more, people can sell more, people can wear more, and things like that. But then the idea is to bring back the handloom khana, back in the reckoning. Earlier there were about 38 designs on khana. And you have only about 12 or 13 of them currently, and now it is reduced to about 5 or 6. The weavers now realize that they want to bring back this design of yours as well, because they're very beautiful. You actually you wear a khana blouse, the feel that you get as an individual is a whole lot than wearing any other weave. I'm sure you would second with me here as well,
My
right?
favorite fabric, yes.
Absolutely. So the touch that it gives you, the rustic feel that you feel on wearing a khana, is a whole lot different than any other weave that you do drape, right? So and the weavers have realized that there is a market for handloom khana as well, and then it's all making a small comeback. We're hoping that in the days to come, there are a lot more that we get to see as a. And handloom saris are being made out of khana material as well. If you actually see, I said only half a meter. It is half a meter in width and
Hmm.
not half a meter in length, which is the reason why you will have to attach two pieces to get one sari length. So they are doing all that new design intervention in khana as well to bring the sari. Uh, I mean, the most popular ones are the power loom khana saris, because it's easier to make. It is easier to mount. Handmade khana saris is not a practicality as yet. So the work is on. But then, until then, khana still remains a beautiful blouse piece that you can accessorize or wear it with any weave of the country, and that makes it all the more beautiful.
So true, so true. So people like you have done a lot of work, on social media, in terms of popularizing ilkal, popularizing the khana, weave. And but are you happy when you see the amount of efforts that are being taken by government bodies, consumer bodies, or what have you, in terms of promoting these weaves outside Karnataka and Maharashtra, or even outside India?
Ilkal saris should have ideally been on the same platform as a Kanjivaram or a Banaras, because the quality of saris that came for a very long time were of the same stature or more. What essentially it lacked was the push from the government, for it to be a national weave or a state weave and things like that. So for a very long time, Ilkal saris were relegated. I mean, a lot of people perceived Ilkal saris to be a village sari. It was not given the stature of it being in the national parlance as well. A lot of people dismissed it as it being a village sari. In the last 10 years, when Ilkal moved from handloom to powerloom, there was a huge dip in the interest for Ilkal saris. But then, with the advent of social media, all that has actually taken a 360-degree turn. More and more people are now aware that there is something called the Ilkal saris, and mind you, it is in this lockdown period, in this entire lockdown period, perhaps Ilkal is one of the very few weaves that actually did not go down on demand. It was actually very surprising, because the weavers that I work with, the weavers by and large in North Karnataka, have told me that there has been a continuous demand. I mean, of course, the supply is less because of various logistical issues and things like that. But then the demand never went down. That's also because of the kind of push that evangelists like us, or some of us who are very passionate about the weave, talk about it extensively. The government, I mean, you can't possibly pinpoint to the government that it is not doing much, because it's the same across the board, across many weaves of India. So Ilkal is also going through the same they're on the same plane. But then, uh, as I said, new colors have been brought in to give it a contemporary touch and look and feel and things like that. So the inquisitiveness or the, oh, I want to own one Ilkal sari has actually gone up substantially in the last 4 or 5 years. And then I'm hoping that this trend will continue in the days to come. Also, the social media to a large extent has been a positive influencer on weaves like Ilkal and so many other weaves that are moderately priced. So when I say moderately priced, how you would ask me, how is it that while all the weaves of the country have gone down on demand, why is that Ilkal's demand has gone up? Is because most of the saris are priced in between 800 to 2300 rupees. So that is not an expensive buy, so to say, right? You could actually binge on buying one sari a month, right? Ilkal can be your, or is an average buy, is the reason why the demand during the lockdown went up considerably.
That's very encouraging. So, are you also seeing the younger generation among the weavers taking up weaving of Irkal? So, is the future in terms of continuity of this handloom weave secure?
Not really, because the younger generation is still not coming back to weaving Ilkal saris. Most of the weavers that you would see now are above the age of 45 to 50. I have seen very less of the younger generation coming back to business. Why? Because the government is still not able to give them the kind of subsidy that they work on, and they are only now getting to know that the weave is actually getting more popular by the day. So in the days to come, the idea is also to enthuse them to tell them or to let them know that the demand is as high as it possibly can be at this point in time, and that they should actually start working on the looms that can give them a lot of productivity, as opposed to going back to hospitality business that they would do, or menial work that they would do in urban areas. It still is a big concern and a big issue, because sari weaving is a family business across North Karnataka. A family would actually be a part of the ancillary work of any sari making. What do I mean by ancillary work is gumming a sari, or putting the nool in an order, or putting the spindle in the loom and things like that. So all of those things are ancillary work that is done before weaving of a sari. So that's a family work done. Whereas the younger generation are still feeling that there is no future ahead. The sari is not extinct. It does not need revival. All it needs is a push, and all it needs is the right marketplace to actually showcase and portray. So that is the work that is on currently. You don't need to bring in new designs, because Ilkal practically has no design at all. So the push effectively is only in giving it the right marketplace, so that the saris can be popularized and the production can increase proportionally.
So that's that's very very typical. I've seen when I'm speaking to so many experts that there seems to be a renewed interest in people
Correct.
for handlooms, and therefore the one would imagine that the younger generation should actually take it up. However,
Correct.
on that side, you find that the younger generation feels probably migrating to a town or a city in search of jobs is far more fulfilling, far more paying
Correct.
than this. So therefore, why would I do it? So there seems to be like when the marketplace demand goes up, the supply is a challenge, and to get both of them in balance is really,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Which
yeah,
is what the power loom is doing. They are actually,
exactly.
taking advantage of it.
Yes,
So,
exactly. So true.
so,
So, Vrinda, thank you so much. This has been very enlightening. I mean, I look up to you in all the social medias which we've met through as as an Ilkal queen, You've promoted
Thank you so much.
you promoted this view so much that, when I think of an Ilkal, I think of Vrinda straight away. So, I'm hoping that in a very small way, I'm able to, kind of take your voice across to a lot more people.
Thank you so
And
much.
promote this weave, because it really deserves mainstream attention
Absolutely.
for continuity. So thank you so much. And I'm not going to let you go that easily because I know you have a wealth of information on other Karnataka weaves, like the Udupi and the Charaka and Patida Anchu and the like. So, we will definitely realign another day for, having a discussion
Surely.
on all of that. So thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate this.
Thank you so much. And I'd also like to thank so much of this effort in taking Ilkal forward with me as well, because any sari added extra to your wardrobe also means that you are giving work to our viewers. And that makes a tangible difference as well. I look forward to talking to you about other saris of Karnataka as well over a period of time, when we can talk about it. But I am so happy to share this frame with you in an Ilkal. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hope you enjoyed today's episode of Abnormal Presence Touring Talkies. Do stay tuned on our Facebook and Instagram page for updates on future episodes. Do leave your comments, suggestions, and feedback on this video right below the video. Thank you very much.